Yes, sir.
A lot of problems trying to push them in to keep them locked.
Yes.
If I found if they're pushing, I could grab the legs up.
Yes.
Right? Like just a quick diversion, and then it was like easier to.
Absolutely. So there's a simple concept which kind of goes like this, and I'll put this as diplomatically as possible. A retarded monkey can block one thing. Like you don't have to have any skill or intelligence. Like if we're gonna box and I can only throw left hooks at you, and you're like, sweet, best defense ever. You don't have to be intelligent. You'll come up with an easy solution. So anytime we're just like trying to force one thing to happen, they can block it in ways that are not optimal. And by just creating any other direction of offense, you can ease, like that's basically what we want to do, is just give them even just like two choices. If you can have a good like 1-2, that's totally suitable. More is great, but it doesn't have to be more. Like again, you can be a world champion in boxing by having a good 1-2. Generally just a heavyweight, because they kind of suck. But still, like, you know, that's all it takes. Because if I have a 1-2, it's not really a 1-2, because it could be 1-1-2. It could be 1-2, 1-1-2, 1-1-1-1-2. Like there's so many combinations just from two things. If you add a third, now it's like infinite possibilities. So if you're only ever grabbing the ankles and just trying to stuff them in one direction, it's really easy for people to come up with ways to block that. If you're moving the ankles in multiple directions, or knees, and we'll talk about that in a minute, then it just becomes overwhelming. So yeah, don't get stuck in it. Like there's like a few of you who are just like, you're like glitchy video game characters running into like a wall where you're like, oh, that didn't work. Oh, that didn't work. Oh, that didn't work. And then you're just trying to like roll the legs by super hard and then try to pass the guard. Which again, I'm not saying that won't work. I'm just saying it won't work against anybody good. Right? Because big movements almost never work against good people, because good people don't make big movements and they don't commit when you make a big movement. They exploit the big movement, right? Again, use this silly boxing terminology. Like I'm not gonna land that on you, but you will land 8 things on me if I try to throw that on you. So if you're trying to like chuck someone's legs to the side super hard and hope that you can dart into the space, that works to the point where the bottom player is super tense, so like just be like, you know, tense like that. There we go. Beautiful, worked great. But if he's just relaxed and I go to do that, I go, nothing happens, then I dive on his frames and nothing happens. Does that make sense? So we don't want to make like big movements, we want to make multiple smaller movements in multiple directions. Yours is a perfect example of that. They're over defending one thing, you flip the legs up. They go to the inside, you leg drag. They go to the outside, you knee cut. You can't defend everything, certainly not in this game, because you're not allowed to attack. So that creates the context. Does that help? Any other questions, guys? Yes?
For a drill like this, like, do you prefer the person on the bottom? Like, I was having more success self-framing than framing on them, because they were so focused on my ankles.
Well, so there you go. It's like, in your context, yes. Right? So when you say for this game, do I prefer this or do I prefer that? It really depends on what my partner is doing. I am the person with the limited options. I'm only allowed to do certain things. So if I start being like, oh, that works really well in this context, I'm like, let me self-frame, and then the other person doesn't really worry about deflecting my legs that much, they just start doing something else, right? Like self-framing works really well against hip redirection. It doesn't work particularly well against people trying to come through the middle, and like knee cut as an example. So if your partner doesn't do that, the self-frame seems like, hey, this is pretty OP. This guy's just trying to deflect it. But then if somebody comes in and starts doing something else, that's not. So like basically the answer is whatever they're doing, you're gonna adapt to that. So in your case, clearly it's working. But if you have a different partner and they're doing something else, it may not be an optimal strategy. Does that help? Any other questions, guys? Yes?
When you're passing,
sorry, I didn't see it. You already got one.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I just have a logistic question about
Sure.
the game.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that we want to get rid of the hooks, so we are basically practicing the frames, like as the guard player in the
Yes.
frames.
Yes.
Just want to get the mindset.
That's the idea. So we want you to just have to do defensive movements where you like, because once we start to incorporate hooks, now we can start off balancing people.
Right.
They have to like regain their balance, and so which is correct to do, but for what we're working on right now, we don't want to do it.
Yeah, because I realized like if we only focus on the frames, it's actually better for us to keep our enemies like closer to our body.
100%.
But like if we want to attack and the hook's like, we actually want it to keep dynamic.
Well, yes and no. So if by reaching out to make a hook, you extend your leg in a way that's not great, you don't want to do that, right? So like, I'm not saying never, but I almost never extend my legs to make hooks. I make hooks when someone gets close enough to me. So I would not, like if you're standing, I would not at any point be like, sweet, let me make a hook, right? Because like that, this is not a guard shape. This is him immediately dropping through a pass. Whereas if I'm over here, now I'm like, oh cool, I can make hooks without compromising my guard structure. Does that
Yeah, it makes sense.
make more sense?
Yeah, and another question is when you are on top, you want to make like small like movements instead of a huge one so that your opponent won't tell.
Correct.
But like, what kind of like movements would you recommend for that?
Leg movements?
Yeah, leg movements.
Okay, so it's not how this is a leg, it's more just that if I'm gonna make, you see how like those were small, distinct movements to create enough of an opening, right? As opposed to being like, you see what I like? So it's just literally, I need to cover less ground and give him like the targets.
So you actually fake like misdirect and then go to the direction instead of
Absolutely.
like stepping in direct.
Yes. So we will, you know, if we talk about faking or feinting, this is something that's like pretty accepted in striking. Everybody understands that you will, you know, like you pump fake a jab. We don't tend to feint very much in grappling. Everything's like, I'm gonna do a knee cut. Right? Super obvious, right? And the fact that you can still make it work is, you know, a failing testament to most grapplers' intelligence. But like most of the effective stuff at the higher level is like, oh, you thought I was gonna do this, you started to react to that, then I did another thing, you overreacted a little to that, but still not enough for me to get you. Then I went to another thing, oh, now you gave me a big enough reaction. Like experts don't just like give you giant space. So you have to be like 1, 2, 3, 4, there we go, finally got a thing. That's what, like when you talk about connected techniques, when people chain techniques together, that's really what that is. A chain is just like, I got you to bite on enough things that I finally got you with like the 4th or the 5th thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Any other questions? Good, let's talk a little more about control.
Question over here, sir.
Sorry, where are we? Over here. Oh, sorry about that.
I'm not sure if this is also sort of a logistical thing, but what I found, what I found was, at certain points when I had my guard structure in,
Yes.
and I felt like my opponent was sort of pushing on me.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier not to extend, but I feel like involuntarily sometimes what I would do is I would push out to reset the position. In the context of this game,
Yeah.
is that wrong to do?
I mean, it's almost always wrong to do just regardless.
Right.
Right? Like, can you show me an example of
So
it
for
happening?
example, like if he's putting in like if he's putting in pressure like coming over on the side, right, and I'm sort of involuntarily even like putting in here, right,
Yeah.
and I'm just sort of pushing him away like here, and then resetting back into the middle like that.
Yeah, so I mean, now we're getting really rabbit hole. So can I just be the person on top for a second?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so I'm getting here.
You're getting here for
Yeah. And you're gonna start to,
Yeah. So
see how like as you're doing that,
Right.
I'm dropping through a space that you're making?
right.
Now what I want you to do the same thing, but don't try to push me that much.
Okay.
So I want you to just put your foot on me. Yeah, and just stay here, exactly.
Yep.
Good, and don't push away, just keep your foot on, just keep it like on me.
Sure.
There, yeah, exactly, good. Yeah, exactly like that. And so see how like, your guard structure is actually better right now?
Right.
Because I can't break through this easily.
Right.
But as soon as you give me that stronger push,
Right. That opens the space up. Okay.
that's the problem. Right? So as an inexperienced guard player, if you're facing more inexperienced guard passers, when you push, you end up resetting.
Right.
When you end up facing more experienced guard passers, when you push, they just turn.
Right.
Right? So we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about blading. We're going to talk about the leading edge. I, as the guard passer, will have a leading edge in my body. You, as the guard player, are trying to block that leading edge. If that leading edge is obvious, it's easy to block. If it's dynamic and it's changeable, it's harder to block. So what's happening here is you've got a leading edge and you're like, I know what that is, and you're just heaving the guy away. Which in the context isn't wrong because you're not experiencing the negative consequences. Right? So let's just start to talk about that. But did that answer your question?
No, that answered the first one.
Okay, all right. So yeah, let's talk about that. Let's talk about pushing and let's talk about the leading edge. So